Hello and welcome to Introductory Lecture 2A for the Living Epic courses, the 3-week non-credit course and the 3-credit undergraduate course, Gaming Homer. This lecture will introduce you to the materials for the course, and we'll start out by talking about the Homeric epics. The next lecture, by the way, that is Introductory Lecture 2B, will introduce you to the activities for the course. Anyway, back to the ancient epics, the Homeric Iliad and the Odyssey, and I will link very near this video lecture translations that you can find online of those epics, but I highly recommend acquiring my favorite translations. That is the translations by the poet Richmond Lattimore. His Iliad is published by the University of Chicago Press, and his Odyssey is published by HarperCollins. And I'll just say a little bit about why I think these translations are so worth acquiring. One is that I'll be quoting from them as we move through the video lectures of the course, but more importantly, Lattimore is the only translator I know who really gets the feel of the Greek into his translations. And just to give you one little example of that, he's the only translator I know who always translates the same Greek words with the same English words, which is something that's absolutely essential to understanding one of the themes of this course, the way repetition allows improvisation. That is, the bards learn the system of repeated phrases and then they can improvise upon it. The same way a player learns the way, for example, a level works in Halo or a quest works in an MMO fantasy game, and then can improvise against that backdrop. So again, I highly recommend Lattimore, but I will link to free public domain online translations of the Iliad and the Odyssey as well. And then for the 3-credit undergraduate course, required and highly recommended for people in the non-credit course are a couple of secondary sources. One, a book by Albert Lord called The Singer of Tales, and I'll link to some information about that, which is our seminal work on the bardic tradition, because he and his colleague Milman Perry were able to study a living bardic tradition, the one in Yugoslavia that was still alive into the 20th century, and you'll be able to read much more about that in The Singer of Tales. Again, that's required for Gaming Homer, but not for Living Epic. The other one that's required for Gaming Homer and not for Living Epic is Nagy, N-A-G-Y, The Best of the Achaeans, which builds on the foundation of Lord and takes it into very interesting social and also ethical dimensions. And again, that's The Best of the Achaeans, published by Johns Hopkins, and there will be a link to that as well near this lecture and also on the syllabus. So those are the traditional texts. The less traditional materials involve 2 games that are required and also free. That is Club Penguin, which is now owned by Disney, and I think is a wonderful way into the basic structure of massively multiplayer online games, as well as a whole bunch of other different gaming concepts. And then the fantasy massively multiplayer online role-playing game, RuneScape. And there will be links to both of those right near this video lecture and on the syllabus. So those games are required. There's also, you'll find on the syllabus, a list of optional games, and these are games you can play at will. Many of them are for the console, the Xbox 360, which is a console that I have. I don't have a PlayStation, but I would supply a couple of games for the PlayStation that you could optionally play. And also, if there's a game that you think might fit an assignment, feel free to bring that up and ask me whether it's appropriate. It usually will be. And those optional games are games that you can play to fulfill the requirements of the course, but which I don't require everybody to have. And then the next bunch of material has to do with game forums. One of the things we're going to do, and I'll talk about this in the next little lecture, the activities introduction, is look at some forums where gamers hang out and practice their culture. What you're going to be doing, as I'll say in the activities, is reading those and then writing up a report on them. There will be links provided for those materials as we go through. And then the final bit of material is interviews with people who actually make games. And we may actually manage to get some very famous people who make games as the subject of these interviews. After we compose the interviews and I conduct the interviews, something I'm really excited about, we'll then use the text, the content of that interview, as a material which we're going to analyze for the course. All right, let me see if I've forgotten anything. Doesn't look like I have, except maybe to say that a couple of the games that are optional are games that I'm going to be playing on these video lectures. One of them is the various games of the Halo series. Another is Fable 2, a wonderful game which has just come out, a fantasy role-playing game. And another one is Lord of the Rings Online. And I'll have links for information about all of those games in case you find that you want to play them yourself to enrich your experience of the course. I think that's it for the materials, and I'll see you again in part 2 of Introductory Lecture 2 to talk about the activities of the course.